Welcome to the FeelWell podcast, where we are exploring and redefining health and wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Lauren DeCicco, and today we have a very dynamic and insightful guest, Dr. Love. Dr. Love is a doctor of Asian medicine, licensed acupuncture physician, and a grandmaster of Blue Dragon medical Qi-Gong. He is a scholar, warrior, physician, and priest, and he is healing the world with unconditional love. He is here today to share more about his inspiring story and how he is making the world a better place. You are extremely inspirational to me, and I would love to hear more about how you got to where you're at today.
Oh, that's going to take way longer than the time we have. I've been doing this since I was 19 years old. I started out in the Navy, and I healed my bunkmate of a sore shoulder. And the next day he brought a friend and I healed his knee. And then they started calling me Brother Love. And I just became this healer. And then when I got out of the Navy, I went back to Philadelphia and my friends made me feel weird about it. So I went to massage school so I could legitimately touch people. And then after 7 years, one of my massage clients said, "You are way too smart to be a massage therapist and a fitness trainer. You should go to medical school." And I was like, ooh, medical school. I don't know. And then I met the Dalai Lama at a Tai Chi class at the UN. And he said, "What do you do?" And I told him, he says, "You should be doing something different." And I said, "Well, what do you think I should do?" He said, "Let me introduce you to my personal physician, Dr. Yeshi Dandin, who is, or he passed recently, the world's leading expert in cancer. He cured 5 people of incurable cancer with acupuncture and herbs." And I'm like, okay, that's what I want to do. So that set me off on my path.
So you knew you were a healer of some sort.
Right.
But we always need to categorize for some reason in our world. But you found what resonated the most with you. And I know you have multiple disciplines that you practice that you blend together. Yes.
Right.
Yes. What are all of those disciplines?
Well, so there's structure. Mm-hmm. Structure determines function. And posture determines structure. So I was born with a birth defect. Something was wrong with one of my legs. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was going to get me out of the military, but it didn't. Mm-hmm. So I had flat feet and knock knees, and one of my legs was longer or shorter than the other. And I started doing Qi-Gong, and within 6 months, my legs healed themselves. And I was like, whoa, this is way more than just a cool exercise. So then I delved into the physical aspects of Western anatomy as applied to acupuncture meridians. So in March of 2023, Western medicine, determined that the body had 70% fluid that we call interstitial fluid, and the fascia and the connective tissue all worked as one unit. Once Western acknowledged that, it explained acupuncture meridians, because up to that point, Western medicine said, we can't find meridians. We can't find acupuncture points. You guys are hocus pocus. Mm-hmm. You have no credibility in Western science.
It's a very siloed, individualized, isolated mindset in Western medicine.
Exactly. Siloed is a perfect word. Thank you for that. So what I did was went down the anatomy rabbit hole and was able to overlap the meridians with the arterial blood flow in the brain, the neck, the major joints, the hip, the spine. And then I was able to map the vagus nerve to the yoga, what we call the twin snakes. So once I was able to map the nerves to the blood flow to the acupuncture meridians, that was like a game changer. So then I started teaching other acupuncture physicians, and they were like, whoa, we never learned this in school. And I'm like, yes, I know.
So you put this together. You blended your knowledge together. What do you call this? Do you have a name for this practice, this theory, this what you're teaching other practitioners?
The new medicine.
Okay.
In 20 years, what I'm doing right now will be the standard of medicine.
Yes.
So let me give you an example. Let's say you had low back pain.
Mm-hmm.
You would hunch your shoulders. Why would you hunch your shoulders? Well, stress, posture, any number of things. But when you hunch your shoulders, you literally stretch the fascia in the low back. And then any kind of movement is going to strain it. And 5 years, 10 years down the road, you've injured yourself unknowingly.
Mm-hmm.
By the same token, the hamstring muscle is connected to anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a shortened hamstring, what does that do? That pulls you another way. So the hamstring will pull your pelvis out of alignment, and then any type of movement is going to cause pain. So if your traps are up high and your hamstrings are short, then your spine is completely tight all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you went to an orthopedic or a chiropractor and you said, I have back pain, what would they treat? The pain. They wouldn't lower the shoulders. They wouldn't take the stress off.
Or even consider the emotional aspect of it.
Or even consider the emotional.
Yes. In as a physical therapist, I've learned along the way that we treat symptoms and dysfunction or patterns and things like that. But what has become so effective for my practice is to reel it back even further and start looking at the systems, and especially how like emotions manifest in our bodies. So to you, do you believe that the emotions kind of start first and then the physical follows?
Not only do I believe it, I know that's true.
Yes.
Now, may I ask you a question?
Yes.
What emotion are you feeling right now?
What emotion am I feeling? Anticipation.
Okay. Anything else? Eagerness?
Eagerness,
Okay.
anticipation.
So now why are you crossing
maybe a little
your legs
uncertainty,
this way?
right? So the uncertainty then drives my system to want to provide some sort of felt sensation of support to it, right? So I tend to like to close my body and lock it up to feel a sensation of support.
Is that self-soothing?
Self-soothing, yes.
Okay.
But maybe not in the most productive way to my soft tissue structures. Because like you said, I'm closing off fluid dynamics here.
Exactly. So your
and
femoral
I can feel,
artery.
right. And I can also feel like my psoas muscle wants to brace and tighten. And that's directly connected very closely to my sympathetic nervous system, which drives that fight or flight response. And that.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I met you, I felt a sense of self-confidence.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If I was to physically push you, how would you respond?
By bracing or holding myself.
Okay. So that is a logical response,
right.
Is to brace. But physically, if you were open,
mm-hmm.
then you would not be afraid of anyone pushing you.
Right.
Because in Qi-Gong that I teach, when somebody pushes you, you allow them to push you. But at the same time, you grab onto them. So as they push you, they go down and you're still standing. So it's not the brace, it's just to go with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest that you alter your posture,
mm-hmm.
which would also increase blood flow to your brain and ask even more interesting questions.
And what's interesting is it was the emotion that drove my posture.
Mm-hmm.
But by changing my posture, I can now drive my emotion and alter my emotion a little bit.
And your voice dropped a little bit too,
mm-hmm.
which
not so tight.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And you have even more confidence now.
Thank you, Dr. Love. So can you explain how Qi-Gong works? Like, what is the process of it? How does it work? How do you get involved with it? If you're interested in it, can you just kind of break that down for me?
Okay, so the word Qi is literally translated as breath.
Okay.
Gong means hard work. So you've heard of breath work.
Mm-hmm.
Qi-Gong is the original breath work.
Really? Okay.
But Qi is actually mitochondria. So mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and it's responsible for cellular respiration. So the Qi is the mitochondria. So in Chinese medicine, we say the Qi and the blood flow together. The Qi moves the blood, and the blood pumps the heart. Now, yes, the heart is a pump. Technically, it's a valve, but it is the diaphragm muscle that pushes the air out of the lung that allows blood to come into the lungs to get oxygenated. And when you breathe in, the oxygenated blood then goes into the heart to then bounce out to go up and down. So the very act of breathing is for your heart and your blood pressure and your blood sugar and your cholesterol. And all that is mitigated through the carotid artery in your neck. Now, if you're sitting like this on your texting, or you're at your computer like this, or you're Ubering like this, any type of movement where the shoulders go up and the neck shrinks in, we call that turtleneck posture. You're cutting off blood supply to the brain. So this biohack that I created 15 years ago is you turn your head to the right, and with your right hand, you pluck this muscle, which is called the SCM, sternocleidomastoid muscle. Now, there's a lymph gland that goes into your brain. Underneath that is the carotid artery. Underneath that is the thyroid gland. And underneath that is another lymph gland that goes into your lungs. So if you pluck your neck 4 times, and you do that 16 times once a day, that's the biohack that increases blood flow to the brain, which makes you smarter, and regulates your metabolism, which is the rate at which your body burns calories, and your calcium-magnesium balance.
And it's very closely related to the vagus nerve as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this was my first biohack. The second biohack, and we do that in the morning, by the way. In the evening, we pluck the back of the neck, which we call the suboccipital muscles, and we pluck 6 times down, 6 times up, and that takes like a minute and a half, and you do that just before you go to bed. That increases blood flow to the brain and what we call the glymphatic system. And I'm kind of an expert on the lymphatic system. And I speak at biohack conferences all over the country.
Okay. I think the lymphatic system is a huge missing component when it comes to treatment. And even like I've started incorporating that into my care with physical therapy. So even if somebody has knee pain, I'm going to treat their lymphatic system.
Absolutely.
Because that knee is not going to get better until we have good fluid dynamics there, right?
Exactly.
So what are some of your, besides this hack, is it generated typically by movement? Does Qigong, does that really enforce a lot of good lymphatic flow, or you have other modalities that you like to teach people, or movements or exercises?
Okay. Qigong is an umbrella that includes martial arts, spiritual alchemy, and healing the 10 organs and the 6 major joints and the 6 systems. So there's medical, martial, and spiritual aspects. So Qigong is this big umbrella that encompasses all of that. Now, human beings have had conflict from the beginning. So certain cultures learned martial art. They learned how to defend themselves. And other people learned weapons and sticks and swords and spears and what have you. But other people learned how to heal broken bones, how to heal stab wounds, and, as you said, how to heal the emotional heart. So when we have anger, frustration, resentment, shame, blame, and guilt, we build walls around the heart. And then the very person that we're supposed to be in relationship with is the one who's the source and the brunt of the conflict. Because the random person that we see, we just, they're not important. I'm not going to get upset. But this person I live with, or this person I care about, there's this constant push-pull. So anger, fear, anxiety, resentment, shame, blame, guilt, depression, all of that causes muscular tension, which restricts blood flow, blood oxygen, and nutrients. And then nerves get starved, causing pain. And then 10, 15 years down the road, you have actual organ dysfunction. So to answer your original question is, how does Qi-Gong work? It does the opposite of your emotional distress. So for example, if you're depressed, you kind of look like this. So the Qi-Gong exercise for antidepressant is this, okay? If you have grief or sadness and loneliness, again, the chest contracts. So we do these kinds of exercises to counteract that. Worry affects the digestive system. So when you're upset, you either lose your appetite or you overeat. And everybody falls into both of those categories. So when you constantly contract the abdominals, like, she said what? He did that. So that then restricts the ability of the digestive system to function. So then we do abdominal exercises to break that stagnation
open
up.
It up. It's really to open.
It's to open.
And flow and allow, and there's energy component to that.
Exactly.
Energy.
Now, I got a question for you.
Yes.
What are the two biggest drives in human beings?
Fear. Are you talking positive drives?
Fear's not a drive. Fear's a reaction.
I think people are motivated.
That's a reaction. The drive is food and sex.
Food and sex.
Those are the two biggest drives.
Maybe money.
Well, there was no money until 500 years ago. Okay.
Primal drives.
Primal drives, food and sex. Okay. So food for survival.
Right.
And sex for
procreation.
Procreation, that I will be able to reproduce myself. And why is that important? Because they didn't have Social Security back then. So the only people who are going to take care of you in your old age is your children.
Okay.
And if you don't have children, nobody's taking care of you when you get old. Because if you marry, she's going to get old too. Who's going to take care of her? So typically the firstborn son takes care of the mom, and the last-born daughter takes care of the dad. That's up until the last 200 years, where the European system screwed everything up. But that's what was typical. So what Qi-Gong does is it helps you control the mechanism, which is a self-soothing. So overeating is self-soothing. So we do these particular digestive exercises, which help soothe so you don't want to overeat. Okay? Now, in Asia, I was shocked to find they did not have toilets the way we do. There was a squat hole. And you would squat. And I went to Turkey. They squat. I went to Indonesia. They squat. And I was like, I'm not used to this. I want a chair that I'm used to.
The U.S. citizens would be in trouble.
Well, I was.
Most adults don't squat.
So we
or
lost.
Beyond the height of a chair.
Exactly. So we've lost that musculature, and it affects our knees and our hips. And more importantly, we don't completely evacuate our bowels. So one of the Qi-Gong exercises we do is called anal rectal breathing. And you might know it as Kegel exercises, but we actually use that for men to strengthen their prostate, as well as urination and defecation and sexual stamina. So we got 3 birds with one exercise. So that's pretty important from my perspective for Qi-Gong.
Well, I think that we ultimately, as evolved as we have become, it still goes back to our primal nature, right? So reincorporating that and reintegrating that, how we're supposed to be in our primal beings, is where we're going to get that proper flow and movement. And
so where in our current culture do we get that primal instinct? Where is that promoted? Where is it promoted? Advertised? Where is that?
I feel like it's not even addressed until somebody has suffered for a really long time, and then they have to go back to the root of everything. So, but you don't, I'm not sure where you even naturally see that or encourage that. So, and it's really, really holistic practitioners are really the only ones still talking about that. But we're
okay. I'm a downer on holistic practitioners because they don't know that anger affects the liver, that worry affects the digestion, that fear affects kidney function. They don't know that.
The emotional component of how it's resonating in your body.
Exactly.
Yes.
They don't know that. So I don't know how someone can call themselves holistic if they don't know that and apply it in their own life, let alone recommend it to a client.
Well, in my personal journey, I didn't understand that until I started looking at things like my trauma, for example. But because I've had that experience and have actually done that trauma work, I am aware of how trauma or emotions manifest physically in your body. But I guess that was my fortunate side to my painful experience.
It's your awareness.
My awareness, the awakening to it. But that's not necessarily how other practitioners have come into what they practice. So they are missing a lot of those components.
But they're not trained.
They're not trained.
There's no training.
And that's what you're trying to do.
And that's exactly what I'm doing.
Yes.
So my very first client out of Chinese medicine school, the patient starts crying. So I'm like, oh my God, I did something wrong. So I pull out all the needles. I give her a cup of tea. She's still crying. I cradle her. She's still crying. I'm like, okay, what happened? She said, oh, my husband, who's 20 years older, looted the bank account and left me. Well, that's not in the Chinese medicine textbook. My husband stole my money and left me. Where's the treatment for that? So that sent me on another journey. And then I found out that there is a school that teaches the 5 elements, that teaches about the emotions. Now, Chinese medicine school kind of vaguely teaches it, but not in depth like the 5 element school. So I went to the 5 element school to get that grounding. And then I met my Qi-Gong Master in 1983, and he gave me the deep grounding. And he was imprisoned by the communists for 8 years because he was teaching Qi-Gong. And they didn't want anyone to know how to heal themselves. So that's why I'm so dedicated to what I'm doing, because he was beaten and tortured just for teaching it. So there's lots of people who teach Qigong, but there's very few who teach medical Qigong.
And that's what you're teaching.
And that's what I'm doing.
And how does someone learn from you? What are you doing? What's your platform? Do you have in-person teachings? I would like to know for my own.
Okay, so I have all 3.
Because I'm going to be exploring your teaching.
I have a feeling you're going to become a student. So we have an online platform called loveqigong.com.
Okay.
And that's going to take you to the academy, and then you can register for the daily class. Then we have in-person at the beach, weather cooperating, Atlantic and A1A across from the Opal Grand Hotel. And then I do private classes one-on-one at my office.
Okay. And you still treat with acupuncture as well? Do you or do you typically stay when you're treating one-on-one clients?
Okay, I'm glad you asked me that.
What modalities are you?
There are 10 tools in my medical bag. Acupuncture is only one of 10 tools. So to call me an acupuncturist is like calling the car mechanic the wrench man or the carpenter the saw man. So you're completely disregarding the science behind what I do. Not only did I go to school, to 2 different schools to learn, I taught acupuncture school for 10 years. So I'm actually more than a regular doctor of Chinese medicine because I learned Tibetan medicine, Japanese medicine, Korean medicine, Thai medicine, and Siddha medicine, which is the original form of Ayurveda in India. So when I say I'm a doctor of Asian medicine, I have mastered multiple disciplines of medicine.
Okay. So when someone comes to work with you, you are going to blend together whatever modalities you would think will encourage the best outcome.
Exactly.
To drive that and open their energy systems and their fluid dynamics and open their posture and counteract whatever it is that they're coming in with.
I love the way you say fluid dynamics because that's exactly what I do. So you've heard the term holographic. Well, if you take the Tibetan system and then you overlay the Hindu system and then you overlay the Chinese system and then that becomes a holograph of the human body, and all these different ways of treating it is closer to the whole than any one individual. And then we add in Western anatomy. Now we got it.
There you go. I love it. That's really intriguing, especially coming from the medical world. I'm extremely intrigued by it. And I know the value in this systemic approach rather than symptom approach.
Exactly.
So what's your best advice for those interested in this path to healing?
Okay. So go to loveqigong.com. If you text me at 561-502-6200 and mention this show, I will give you a secret code to get in without paying for 3 days.
Okay.
So you can look around and see.
I'm going to write that number down. Okay. So any last takeaway, major thing that you want people to really grasp from this conversation today?
Okay, so there's 3 things. There's something called the triple energizer in Chinese medicine that, again, Western just got a hold of, that it's an actual physical thing. The second thing is, if you learn the meridians, if you're already a healer, a practitioner, what have you, if you learn the meridians, it'll make what you do better. And number 3, I teach 8 different ways of meditation. And meditation is the best way to calm and cool your nervous system, which, given this culture, you're in flames. Always. You're like Johnny Torch.
I haven't met many people who aren't.
So like I said, I teach 8 different ways to meditate. One of those is going to work for you. So faith, practice, study, train. That's the only way you're going to get there.
Well, this has been amazing. Such a great conversation. My wheels are spinning. I'm going to be going down a few rabbit holes after this. I thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you can come back some other time and then we can talk a little further about some different things. And maybe I will have studied under you and
there you go.
Learned even more from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.